Good morning, everyone. My name is Antonio Cangiano, and I'm a software developer and AI evangelist at IBM now for almost 14 years. My latest book is Technical Blogging, which is a book for people who are interested in advancing their career in tech. And if you'd like to follow me, I have a blog called Programming Zen, and I'm also on Twitter. You might also find me on LinkedIn if you're interested. Feel free to send me an invite, and I will connect with you after the webinar. So let's jump right into it. How many of you are familiar with this? We are experiencing a higher than normal call volume. So you're on the phone, you're calling for getting some kind of technical support or customer support, and this is what you get, right? And you might think, well, if it's always higher than normal call volume, maybe it's just normal, right? And another one that you might hear is your call might be recorded for quality and training purposes. But in reality, often you'll wonder how much it is really used for training purposes. So this is pretty much the normal experience when people interact with enterprise customer support or even just smaller companies. And usually you end up being on the line for a long time because they're very busy. Maybe 20 minutes later, you'll hear, have you tried turning it off and on again? Now, this is frustrating because if it works, it's frustrating because you start thinking, I should have thought of this. I spent half an hour for something so simple. And if it doesn't work, you think, do they think I'm stupid? Of course I know to turn it on and turn it off. So it's not a great experience. And it's not that the solution is bad, it's that it took a long time to get to the solution. You were online for a long time to get an answer. I like this strip by Dilbert that says our highest priority is satisfying our customers, except when it's hard or unprofitable or we're busy. And the problem is that it's not that companies are not trying to provide great customer care, it's that scaling human-powered customer care is very hard. There's only so many agents on the phone ready to answer, and scaling that operation, it's very costly and it takes a long time because you have to train them. And so it's a very hard problem to solve, especially when companies are growing very fast. So a solution is a virtual assistant. So we have AI, why not use artificial intelligence to help us? So a virtual assistant or a chatbot, which is a way to automate as a sort of a first line of defense, automate the process of providing customer care. And that will free your human agents to handle escalations and problems that are more complex and that the automated software cannot resolve. Now, this is not just me telling you that AI is going to be big as far as the retail market and enterprise market are concerned. There's a company called Meticulous Research, which does this kind of analysis, and they expect compound growth of 35.9% per year. And the industry related to chatbots and AI applied to just the retail market will grow up to $15.3 billion by 2025. And interestingly, the geography that has the fastest growth in this market is actually Asia Pacific. So there's a lot of excitement related to artificial intelligence because so far artificial intelligence has been a little bit of a theoretical exercise. People in almost lab codes with PhDs working on it and doing really cool demonstrations on how to solve chess and Go games. But AI becomes interesting once we start using it for real in the real world to solve real problems. And that's where chatbots really come in because it's an immediate way to apply AI to a problem that is very, very common and expensive for companies. I want to give you a couple of examples of chatbots and how they're being used. And this is one example is of a very small company. One example is a very large company. So this is the very small company. It's a one-man operation, and it's one of those monthly subscription boxes. So you can subscribe, and then for just a few dollars a month, you receive tea in the mail every month. And this was started by one person, and this person was really struggling because he does everything in the operation. He's like literally packing the tea in his living room. And so he found that he spent all of his time answering the same common questions. So customer care is not hard because people ask very tough questions. It's hard because there are so many of them asking those questions. So he was always getting the same questions. Do you ship to my country? How can I select a different package? What kind of teas do you have? How much does it cost? Even though it says right on the home page. So as all these questions came in, he spent all his day dealing with that. So what he did is he contacted me and he said, can you teach me how to create chatbots? And I did, and I taught him how to create chatbots. And so he made a chatbot, a very simple one, because he's not an expert. He's not even a programmer. It's just it's a businessman. But it was simple enough. He was able to leverage AI without having to have a deep understanding of it. And he put a chatbot on, and overnight he cut his technical support request in half. So he received half the emails they received before, because people saw the chatbot, they thought it was cool, they started interacting with the chatbot, they asked their questions, and he didn't have to deal with them directly. And this is just a one-man operation. A much bigger example is the Oscar chatbot, which is with Air New Zealand. I was traveling to New Zealand and Australia, and I was carrying protein powder. And I don't know if you travel ever to New Zealand and Australia, but they're very strict in terms of what you can bring in the country and what you can't. So they really make you a little bit paranoid, start thinking, did I do something illegal? Did I do something wrong? So I asked to the stewardess whether it was okay for me to have protein powder, and they had no idea. Thankfully, I had Wi-Fi on the airplane, so I was able to use their chatbot, which worked amazingly. Like any question I had, the chatbot had an answer. So it's not just that you provide cheaper customer care, but you also provide 24/7, always available customer care, and sometimes even better customer care than your live agents, because it's very easy to train a chatbot with a large knowledge base rather than trying to train a human with its finite memory and knowledge retention. Now, this is also from the same trip, and it's an example of the fact that you need to be, creating a chatbot is great, and it's very useful, but you need to create something that is really good. This is my mobile phone company, and as I arrived in Australia, they sent me a message saying, welcome to Spain. So that's not a great way of providing customer care in an automated way. So they had this interface where I could tell them, yes, add roaming to my plan and so on, which is all great. It's kind of essentially a bare bone version of a chatbot, but they got my country completely wrong. So if you do a chatbot, make sure it works really well. Test it properly so that you provide a great experience to your customers. And this is how my mobile phone company imagines Australia. Now, by the end of this webinar, you will all understand these formulas. Well, not really. The beauty of it is that AI is not just getting a lot smarter and more useful. The beauty of it is that AI is becoming significantly more accessible. Anyone can take advantage of AI. This is the Watson portion of the IBM Cloud Catalog. And you'll see there's all sort of artificial intelligence services packaged for you as essentially black boxes. So even if you're not, especially for the chatbot portion of the services, even if you're not a developer, you can use this. You can learn how to use it. Of course, if you're a developer, then you can do fancier things. You can integrate them. You can connect to other APIs that you already have, other knowledge bases. You can do a lot more advanced things, but it's so accessible that you absolutely don't need to have a PhD in artificial intelligence in order to use it. And I think it's a key part of why AI is becoming more popular. It's going away from just the academia, and it's going into the real world where business users and developers can actually use it. Now, the tool that we'll look at very briefly today is Watson Assistant, because it's a primary tool used for creating chatbots. So how does a chatbot work? In principle, it's very simple. A user will provide an input, basically their question. The chatbot will think really hard, and then we get a response. But that's not very descriptive. It doesn't really tell us too much. So let's look a little bit more zoomed in. So a user input comes in, and then the chatbot will use intents, entities, and the dialogue to determine what kind of response to provide. So let's see what each of these three components represents. So intents are a way for Watson to classify the user input to determine what is the goal, what is the essentially what is the intent of the user. So what are you trying to do with your request? What do you want the chatbot to do for you? So when we create a chatbot, we start by defining intents. For example, this is a chatbot intent called greetings, and we provide some examples. The more examples, the merrier. So now when Watson receives a question from the user, it will look at the question and say, hey, is there any intent that looks similar to this? For example, if the user now were to say aloha, Watson will use artificial intelligence, its knowledge of the world, to say, hey, this kind of looks like the greetings that were defined before. Even though it's not the same string, it's not one of the examples, Watson will know. So that's for intents. The next step is in entities, because the user might provide you a very specific value in their input. For example, if I define a location entity, I can specify three different values. For example, 3 cities of a store. Let's say I have a chain of computers and I have a location in Toronto, one in Markham, and one in Vancouver. So I can define those values so that Watson learns about these concepts. And I can also provide synonyms like, let's say, for example, that my store is located on Bay Street, and some people might refer to it as the downtown store. So I can specify those. So then when the user asks, what's the address of your Toronto store? The artificial intelligence of Watson will classify it correctly as a, let's say we define a location info intent, and then the location Toronto entity value. So if they say, what's the address of your downtown store? Then same thing, even though we use it's a synonym from the user, we'll still correctly classify it. So now that we have the intents and the entities, it becomes very easy to provide a response to the user. And that's what we do in the dialogue. In the dialogue, we define the logic of what we want the chatbot to respond to the user when certain conditions happen, when certain classifications have been detected. So this is an example of a chatbot dialogue. You'll see on the left, there's a bunch of nodes. We'll start at the beginning with a prompt in the welcome node, and then there's different nodes to handle different scenarios. And then on the right, you can see the actual structure of a node. And in this case, there's a node name, a node condition. And here we have some different responses that are conditional to some other condition, as we'll see in a moment in the live demo. So let's review a simple chatbot for fictitious chains of stores. The scope is going to be very simple, just a basic chit chat, location information, and hours of operation. I trust that everyone can see my screen still. So I'm inside of IBM Watson Assistant. Okay, I already created this chatbot, and I will show you that through a preview link. I can show you how the chatbot will work. So I can load the chatbot. I get my response, like my prompt from the chatbot. If I say hi, I get a proper response. Hi there, how can I help you? And then I can say, what are the hours of operation of your Toronto store? I will get the right answer, and then I can say, where is it? And he will know that I'm talking about the Toronto store, and he will say our Toronto store is located downtown at 20 Bay Street. So then I'm going to say thank you. I'll get your welcome. Then I'm going to say bye. And I'll get have a great day. We hope to see you in our Toronto store. Now, this is intentionally didactically very simple to show you the full chatbot. The same principle used to create this chatbot literally took me 5 minutes can be used to create much more involved and complex chatbots as well. So let's see the actual structure of this chatbot. So I'm going to click inside the dialog portion, and you'll see that we are greeted by the intents. And as I mentioned in the presentation, we have different intents. So we have some chit chat intents like the greetings, the thank you, and the goodbyes. And then we also have a couple of more domain specific intents, which is hours of operation, location information. Now, to give you an idea what they look like, if I go into hours info, we have examples like, are you open on Christmas Day? Are you open on Saturdays? Are you open on Sundays? On what days are you closed? And we provide these examples. So we use this example to train what's an artificial intelligence model. Now, there's also entities, as I mentioned, and I created one entity for this, and it's a location entity. And then I created 3 values because in our fictitious store, we have it in these 3 cities. So you'll see that I have Markham, I have Toronto, and I have Vancouver. And then for Toronto and Markham, I also provided some synonyms. And these synonyms do not necessarily mean what you find in the dictionary or a thesaurus. These can be synonyms in the sense of what the user would refer to with these words. So they might refer to your store as the store on Bay Street, and Watson needs to learn that the store on Bay Street is Toronto. So that's a piece of information that is so specific to your business that Watson could not have and know in general. So it's something that you need to train it on, and you do so by specifying it inside of the entity. Okay, now let's go back to the dialog itself. And as you can see, we have several nodes. We start off with a welcome node, and it's our prompt. It's always a good idea to have a prompt that kind of instructs a little bit a user on what to do. So we start, we say, hey, my name is Botman, and I'm a virtual assistant. So this already sets the right expectation with the user. It tells them, hey, don't go crazy. Think this is a chatbot, so set the expectations right. And then we say, okay, we can help you with your questions about locations and hours of operation. And then we say, how can we help you? And then when the user replies, the way how it works is Watson will evaluate from the top to the bottom, and it will stop at the first node that meets the condition. So when we ask about the hours of operations, like we did in the example in the preview, we'll start at the beginning. We're not in the welcome node. So then we'll go to the hours information. Do we meet the condition? Yes, because that's a condition of the node. It's hours information. Then what we say is, if there is a location, assign it to this variable for me. So there's a context variable that we can keep track throughout the conversation with the user. So if a location was detected, remember it and store it in this global variable. So then in the response, we say, well, if the location variable is Toronto, that column in the middle just is a symbol in this language to say is. So if the location is Toronto, then give a response about the Toronto hours. If the location is Markham, give a response about Markham. If the location is Vancouver, give the store location for store hours for Vancouver. And then finally, we also need a fallback case in case when we were here, there was no location provided, because person could say, what are your hours of operation with no location whatsoever? So then we have a fallback case with this true statement, always true if we get to this point of the node. And we'll just say, you can find our hours of operation, and then we can say on our site, for example, and provide a HTML link there as well. So that's the idea. And we kind of do the same thing for location information. So the condition is different, and we get, again, if location is passed, we save it. The responses are different because these responses are going to be about the street address instead of the hours, but the principle is all the same. So then we have a folder here for chit chat interactions, and I like to group them in folders just to keep the structure of the chatbot very nice and neat and organized. And so if you go here, you'll see that so we have 3 nodes, and we have greetings, which is just a very basic node. It's We call it greetings. We set the conditions that the intent of greetings is detected. And then when somebody is greeting us, what do? Usually we reply back. So we say, hi there, how can I help you? For thank you, we do the same thing. We have a thank you condition. And then we provide a little bit more variations because in a chatbot, the chances that the user will say hello multiple times are very low. Usually they'll just say hello in the beginning of the conversation. But in a more complex chatbot, the possibility that they're going to say thank you to us many times is very high. So we don't want to always be robotic and reply always the same way, always you're welcome, you're welcome, you're welcome. So here we are given the option to provide multiple responses to make it a more human-like. So we'll start and we'll say you're welcome, then we'll say no problem, then we'll say maybe we get a little more cheeky and say I aim to please. And we do so, as you can see, we can even have emojis, characters in there. And since the order of this is not very important, it doesn't matter which one gets responded, as long as we don't respond always the same way, we can set the order as random instead of sequential. And so Watson will pick randomly one of these and reply to the user accordingly. So then we have the goodbyes, and the goodbyes are fairly similar. So goodbye intent. And then the responses, though, you'll notice a couple of things that we have the variable that we saved somewhere in the context of the location inside the response itself. And the reason why we do this is so that it's a nice touch to be able to say, if we've been talking about the Toronto store, to be able to say, nice chatting with you. We hope you visit our Toronto store. It might even affect our sales, maybe being so inviting and reminding them about coming to the store. So it's a nice little touch that you can do very, very easily. As you can see, this is not real programming or a lot of code. It's all very, very simple. So the anything else node is important because we don't want to have a chatbot that fails to reply to the user. So it doesn't matter, even if you're saying to the user, I didn't understand your query, it's important that your chatbot, just like a human would do, provide a response to the user, even if it's not a good one, but provides at least some kind of response to say, hey, I didn't catch what you said. So here we have this special condition called anything else, and this condition just says, hey, if all the nodes above that we tried did not work, then this condition becomes true. So it's a special type of condition that basically say, if nothing else worked, we gotta execute this node. And then here we can provide responses as well, a variety, because we don't want, again, the chatbot to be too robotic. We don't want to say, I don't understand, I don't understand, I don't understand. It makes the chatbot look less smart than it should. So we provide a little bit of variety and we say, well, I didn't understand, can you try rephrasing? And I like to keep this in sequential mode instead of random mode. And the reason why this is the case is that when you set it in sequential mode, we could add a fourth condition. We could say, it looks like we're not understanding each other. Would you like to speak to a human? If so, call us at, let's say, 555-555-1234. So now, by keeping it sequential, what this means is that the first time we fail to understand the user, we'll reply with, I didn't understand. The second time we'll say, can you reword your statement? The third time we'll say, I didn't get your meaning. But then at the fourth time, we know for a fact that we failed to understand the user 4 times in a row. Clearly, they're asking way too difficult questions for the current chatbot that we implemented. So in that case, it's better to just tell them, hey, let's escalate to a real human. And that's how the artificial intelligence that we leverage with our chatbot can handle the scenarios of escalating to a human. The interfaces that you create, like the little chatbot window that you would have on your website, for example, can also have icons, for example, to have a human icon, and when you click on it, it will connect directly to a human. If you deploy this chatbot On WordPress, we have a plugin for WordPress that it's really, really easy to use. And it allows you to deploy your chatbot from Watson Assistant to your WordPress site with one click. But if you use that, you're given the option to specify a certain phone number. So then people will see a little phone icon, and if they get frustrated with the chatbot for whatever reason, they can escalate at any time. Okay, so let's see how, when you develop the chatbot, how would you interact and test this? So there's a try it window, a try it out panel, and you'll see in the beginning that we have a prompt, and also we have a context that we can look at. And you'll see that right now there is no context variables. The only one that is the freebie that we get, which is the time zone. So now here, if I say hello, you'll see two things. You'll get this kind of debugging information that tells us that the greetings is the intent that was detected. And we get also the response. And if we click on this little pin, it will also tell us which node satisfied the greetings condition and gave us this response. If by chance Watson failed to detect the right greeting, we can go here and pick a different intent. So if it wasn't a greeting. Now, the thing that matters a lot is understanding that Watson, being an artificial intelligence entity or engine, this is really a natural language processing entity, and its value is in being able to understand the user based on a model that we trained. So of course, the more examples we provide, the more training and corrections we provide, the more refined Watson understanding of the user becomes. Now, one of the key concept that you need to know is that what Watson does when it comes to our intents is it will look at our input, hello, and then assign a probability, so from 0 to 1 or from 0 to 100%, that hello is a match for all the intents in the system. So it will say, is hello a goodbye? Probably not a whole lot. Is it a greeting? Yeah, 100%. It was even one of the examples. Is it hours info? Probably no, the 10% chance maybe. Is it a location info? Maybe 10%. Is it a thank you? Maybe 20% at most. And then basically with this array of values, Watson will be able to say, okay, what is the most pertinent, what is the most confident intent that we have? In this case, it's greetings. So that's the one that then in the whole dialogue gets executed, the node that has that condition. And so we get that response. So now if I say, what are your hours of operation in Toronto? You'll notice two things. We get hours info, which is right. We got the right intent. And we also get the location Toronto entity value. So now we get the right response specific to Toronto, but we also get, if we go into the context, we see that now we stored the Toronto location in there. So then, for example, when we say goodbye, we'll be able to use it to tell the user to come back to our Toronto store. So now, more importantly, when I say where is it, the chatbot knows that I'm talking about Toronto because we stored in the context variable, the location was Toronto. So it's able to appear a lot more intelligent by basically, based on the context of the conversation, give not a generic go to our page to see a list of locations, but the actual specific location that we've been talking about in the conversation so far. So then when I say bye, same thing happens. I get that goodbyes get detected, the right node gets executed, and here the Toronto value, which was declared in the responses, because we stored it in the context, gets used. So as you can see, I realize there's a lot of material all at once and very, very quickly, but there isn't anything really that difficult here. As you can see, it's all fairly logical and simple. It's you create some nodes to handle. Each node typically will handle one particular intent, one particular scenario. If there are some specific values that could be provided by the user, then you make the response conditional and you provide different responses for different values. You can store some information in the context to reuse later. So you could collect in your chatbot a lot of information from the user. And then if you are a programmer, you can connect this to some kind of web service or web function, and then, for example, send all the information that you collected to automatically create a ticket or to automatically book a reservation or all sort of really fancy things, email someone about the information that got detected. So it's a really easy way to create chatbots. And if you're a programmer, you will really enjoy this because you know you can push it to the limit and integrate it with other services and do really great things. But even if you're not, even if you're just a business user who has you can use a little bit of Excel at best. This is simpler than Excel. And you're still using artificial intelligence because Watson is still detecting the user input. Watson is still doing a mathematical modeling and classification of the user input. And with a very logical, block-like structure, you're able to provide the kind of responses that the user is looking for. I just want to show you that should you decide to do that kind of more advanced programming, here's in the webhooks under options is where you will provide your webhook, your HTTP headers, and so on, so that the certain nodes can trigger calls to remote services. There are a lot more advanced options that you can look into, like disambiguation. So when Watson realizes that two intents in the classifications are very close, rather than just picking one by default, we can give the option of prompting automatically the user and say, did you mean this or did you mean that? So did you mean this scenario or do you mean the other scenario? And basically let them clarify. We also have the option to enable or disable autocorrection so that if you make a typo, the system is able to automatically detect it. For example, if I say, where is your Vancouver store with a typo, the system will still be able to automatically detect it. And if the error is not on a specific value, but it's on a common word, this option here will actually correct it for you so that it's a little bit easier for Watson to understand what you're trying to do when the user input is spell checked. Okay, and then so then I wanted to show you there's also system entities, and let me show you what they look like. If we go here, system entities, these are pre-made entities to collect very specific bits of information from the user, like person names, sys location. So if instead of having 3 locations in your store, you want to collect all the cities in the world, you use that one. If you need to collect time and dates, for example, for a restaurant reservation booking, you want to use those. If you want to collect a currency, a percentage, a number, this will automatically detect those values for you, which is very, very handy. Next, I wanted to show you as well that there's analytics, and this is a great way to kind of analyze how your chatbot is being used, which intents are being triggered, which entities are used, when did the chatbot fail to really handle the query from the user because we hit that anything else node at the bottom. We hit our fallback case. Well, it's a great way to see if people are actually using your chatbot, how much time you're saving with it, and how you can improve the chatbot because you can get all this data that you're collecting and put it back in the system to further train Watson. And finally, I wanted to show you that there's also a content catalog. So you see me, I showed you these intents that I created manually, but intents can also be imported from a CSV file. So you could have someone from your a business unit in your department who are not programmers put it in Excel, some bunch of questions or typical questions that they receive from customers, and you'll be able to export them and import them here automatically, so you don't have to do it manually. And to help you out, IBM is also providing you with some pre-trained, at least pre-made examples from various sectors. So you have banking, you have customer care, you have e-commerce, you have insurance, you have mortgage, you have telco, you have utilities, and they also have some generic, more like general and boat control type of intents. So to give you an idea of what they might look like, if I click on, let's say, banking, I can see what kind of intents there are. For example, banking activate card. So these are queries, 17 examples of people asking, how do I activate my card? Or how do I cancel my card? Or how do I replace a card or report a missing card and so on. So this is not quite a pre-made chatbot for you, but if you are building a banking chatbot, it's pretty useful. So you might want to add it to your skill. And once you do, what happens is they get added here, and you'll see that Watson starts training. So Watson now is taking all these intents, all the examples that we pre-made for us, and training on it to become smart and being able to understand when the user asks a query that expresses the concept of replacing a card, no matter how they phrase it, if a human could understand that they're asking for a replacement of a card, so will the Watson AI. And that's the magic of it, really, that where the power is. It's in its natural language processing type of capability. And I wanted to show you real quick that if you go to WordPress.org, and so there is the plugin is called Chatbot with IBM Watson. And yeah, so this is the plugin. And once you install it, all you do is you basically grab your credentials. You will copy your assistant ID, assistant URL. You copy your API key, and you'll be done. You would you just put them in your plugin, and you'd be connected. And now you would have a little icon at the bottom that you can click, and a little pop-up in the corner like this will appear on the screen, which is a very, very easy way. If your sites happen to be WordPress, it's a very easy way to deploy your chatbot that way. Now, if you're not using WordPress, but something else, in the integration section of your chatbot, you'll be able to follow the instruction to install it on Facebook Messenger, Slack. If you have a more premium subscription of this plan, because the plan I'm using here, it's a free plan, you get up to 10,000 API calls for free, which means that per month, which means that you can use the free plan. All of this is free, up to 10,000 messages or requests from the user. Which means that unless you have a very large site or a very large popular chatbot, you can use this for free for a long time. But if you do have a little bit more of an advanced plan where you pay for it, you also have integration with the intercom. And of course, there are some automated integrations like voice agent. So you can integrate with a phone line. If you have a SIP number, you can integrate it with that. So then people can have the same conversation that you have here in your tryout window. You can have it directly on the phone. So the Watson will take the voice from the user, translate into a message, send it to your chatbot, translate back the response into a voice, and then the voice will announce and reply back to the user. All very quick, all very automated. And that's how many large companies are actually doing this. That's how you get from what is essentially a natural language processing engine, which is IBM Watson Assistant, to a solution that is entirely opaque to the user. The user doesn't know anything about how all this works, but all they know is that they phoned the number, the machine picked up, they got the right prompt, they asked a question, the machine understood and gave an answer. And of course, there's always the option to escalate if needed. After the Q&A session, if you do have follow-up questions, I'm definitely available for you, and you can contact. I'm very passionate when it comes to AI and promoting AI and making it something that is real and used by developers and used in the business, and not just something of a theoretical exercise. So I would be more than happy to help people who are interested in the subject. First question I'm going to publish is asked, is there any role of technical writer in chatbots? Very good question. There's definitely a role for, the right term I would say is a copywriter. So when it comes to, for example, the world of marketing online, there are people who write landing pages and so on, right? So a lot of chatbot, creating a chatbot requires maybe some programming. It requires some understanding of how the domain specific, whatever it is, the subject of the chatbot, the answers that you're supposed to provide. But there's also a certain user experience component. It's the better you are as a writer in terms of providing right answers, the more you are capable of creating a good chatbot. So I would say that there is a role for, this is all very new, so there aren't too many established rules and set categories set for jobs, but there's definitely room for someone who is very good at writing interactions with the user in chatbots, especially if you come from a more user experience background and you realize that your input is really useful to developers to kind of define a chatbot that is more user friendly. So very good question. Okay, there's one that I don't know if it's a full complete question, but it said in terms of documentation. So I'll answer that as a way to answer to kind of point out something. So there's definitely, you have, if you go on IBM Cloud, there's definitely a section for you for Watson Assistant documentation. It's a really good documentation, actually. It will tell you not only how to create chatbots through the interface, but it will also teach you about the more programming side of things, how to put in your nodes a web hook, so you're connecting to a remote APIs. It will give you examples of that. It will also tell you how to use more advanced programming features using something called the Spell programming language inside of Watson itself. So it's a very good resource. It's very easy to find. You just literally go in Google and search Watson Assistant documentation, and you'll find a link to it. Okay, so then there's a question that says, if the content is not in the intent, how our AI chatbot will respond or react? Okay, so if the person asks something that is completely relevant to our intents that we defined, Watson will assign a probability that is less than 20%. So if Watson says there's less of a 20% chance that this question is relevant to any of my intents, it will mark the question as irrelevant, and we will go basically, there's no node that handles the irrelevant intent. So we'll get to the very end of the chatbot, and the anything else node will be executed. So the anything else node will tell, I'm sorry, I didn't quite understand what you were saying. Can you repeat it, or can you rephrase it in a different way? Is the sequential response in a row or whenever such a query is got? So the response is, the sequential response is a series of alternatives. So the first time that particular node is executed, the first response is given. Then if later in the conversation, the same node gets executed again, we'll use the second response in this sequence, and then the third, and then the fourth, depending on how many you provided. And then if the node gets executed again, then we start from the beginning in a loop. We'll start from the first response, then the second, and so on. Very good question. Okay, let's see this one. The question is, can we upload pictures and images while asking questions? Can we train a chatbot to understand images? Not by default. So by default, this is very much a text engine. That said, you can have images as responses, since you can, in two ways. You have the ability to respond by embedding HTML, which means you could embed an image, you can embed a video, whatever you like. And there is also an option, instead of having a textual response, you can also specify an image as a response. What it doesn't do automatically is you uploading an image in your chatbot and processing it. That said, if you create your own web interface and you allow in the web interface to upload an image, and then you send it maybe to another Watson service for analysis of this image. We have visual recognition and all sort of other APIs. And then with that kind of information, you connect it to your Watson Assistant instance and then reply something back to the user. There are people who do that kind of stuff. So I've seen developers create those kind of solutions. So you can definitely do it. It's very doable. It's just not the one single role of Watson Assistant. Okay, this is actually an interesting, more generic, but interesting question. Can we say that the need of AI developers is decreasing as the services like IBM Watson Assistant are increasing these days? I would argue that it's kind of the opposite, actually. So you always will have the need for people who take it to the next level. So yes, this is very easy. Yes, someone who is not a programmer can use this. But if I ask you to create a chatbot for a real useful chatbot to solve a certain problem, soon enough you will have your manager tell you, okay, this is great, I love it, but can we also do X, or can we do also Y? And usually their imagination is very vivid, and when they start to try to do really fancy things, then you need to be an AI developer. Maybe what changes a little bit is that you don't need to know as much of the behind the scenes of how the Watson really works, but you still need to be a developer who is familiar with how the Watson services themselves work. And of course, large companies are investing in very skilled, deep knowledge AI researchers and developers, because Watson itself has to be developed. So there's a very, very large team behind it. I feel like I've addressed a little bit this one at the end, but what are the options of deploying the chatbot other than WordPress? So I mentioned there's a built-in way of doing it with Slack, Intercom, Facebook Messenger, but there is an API, again, the documentation will cover this, to create and interact with Watson Assistant with JavaScript, with Python, with .NET, and other languages. So there's no reason why you can't integrate it with other services or with your own application. And you can always use something like, let's say you're doing a JavaScript application, a Node.js application. You can always use examples. Like if you Google Watson Assistant Node.js, you will find a pre-made example of how you create a little web application that interacts, that takes the user input and sends it back to the Watson Assistant service, and then receives back the response and prompted to the user. How can the chatbot recognize the grammatical errors when it's received from the customer? Okay, so there's a couple of things here. So Watson was trained on a very wide array of knowledge. So it was used all sort of human knowledge available on the internet has been fed to Watson to train it. As a result, its understanding of the world includes also typos and errors and so on. There's a spell checking that is built in when it comes to Watson Assistant. There's also something called fuzzy matching. So for example, for entities, if the entity value is misspelled, it will still be detected because Watson understands that if that option is enabled, you want to have a little bit of tolerance in the user input. So it will then basically take the string, compare it with the strings that are defined in your entity values, and say, are there any that are not quite exact but close enough, and then come up with an assessment that statistically this is likely to be the word that the user was looking for. What are the key points that needs to be kept in mind while creating a chatbot? I think I like to, the key thing for me is designing good user experience. So don't think of it as a technological problem. Think of it as a human interaction problem. So write down, like on paper or on a whiteboard, the questions that a user might have, the answer that you would want a human, like if you were sitting down with a human, brand new employee, trying to train them to do a very good job as a customer service agent, or as a technical support agent, or as someone who takes books a reservation, and then define what you want the chatbot to, the kind of interactions you want to have, the kind of dialogue you want to have, and then work back from there, and then implement it with, okay, this is the conversation we want the chatbot to be able to handle. So what are the intents? What were the user trying to do in these conversations? Okay, good. What were the user giving us in terms of specific values? Okay, those are entities. What were the responses that we gave to these users in our ideal conversation? Okay, let's put them in our nodes. So think of it as a human first kind of problem, because then implementing it becomes fairly easy. There's a question that says, how can I build an interactive file acclaim kind of solution? So you'll notice that at some point in my demo, I had something that said, if a location is detected, store it in a context variable. That option is called a slot, and slots allows you to also ask for a question. And each node can have multiple slots. So you could have 5 questions that you need to ask to the user in order to file a claim in one node, and store the values, the responses, into specific context variables. So then you can have the node be connected to a webhook and basically send all the information that you collected, all those variables, as, for example, a JSON object or something like that, to send to the webhook or REST API, so that then that service, it could be also a cloud function, if you will, that service will take care of actually creating the claim in an existing system, whatever claim filing system you have. The question was, can we import intents, entities, and dialog through CSV file without manual intervention? Yes, you absolutely can. I mentioned how you can import intents. You can also import entities. And for the dialog, which is not really a CSV file, so you have the ability to export the whole skill. So you export the whole chatbot, and therefore you can also import it, which makes it very easy if you want to share with other developers, you want to kind of interact with other people who are not developers and just give you spreadsheets. Okay, I'm gonna pick a very difficult question. Okay, so an off-track question. It's actually a great question. But since there is a lot of talk on moral, ethical grounds related to AI, is there a way developers make chatbots less biased? Since Watson or other chatbots learn from the data that humans feed it, how can human bias be avoided? The beauty of the way our Watson assistant is structured is that it doesn't provide the answers. You provide the answers that you want. So it's all a matter of controlling your own bias as you provide the answers to the user. And the Watson will classify, yes, it will classify the user input, but the classification, again, is guided by you. You define what's an intent with examples. You define the specific entity values. So it becomes an exercise not so much in ensuring that Watson is not biased. It becomes an exercise in ensuring that your input is not biased. And how to achieve that, it's a tough question. It's very hard to address because we are very biased. It's our nature as humans. My answer is one that we as an industry have been trying to address. Increase the diversity and inclusivity of the workplace, because if you have a diversity of people, the people working on this project are not just one type of person. It's not just one white person, but you have a multitude of people. Then you're less likely, maybe from all sort of backgrounds. you are way less likely to introduce biases that, for example, damage a particular race or particular demographic, a certain gender, and so on. So I think that you can eliminate the bias input if the people working on the input and reviewing the input are from a diverse background. And I think we are out of time, but as I said, if you do have follow-up questions, please contact me. I'm available on LinkedIn. You can follow me on Twitter as at Cangiano. You can follow me on my blog, Programming Zen, and you can contact me through that. Feel free to get in touch, and also I'm sure the organizers will be able to provide you with my contact information to get in touch.
My name is Mark Velikov, and I am the Director of the Education Businesses for SkillUp Technologies. And I want to take just a few minutes to introduce you to the Foundations of Artificial Intelligence, which is a new course that SkillUp, in partnership with IBM and NASSCOM, has just recently introduced and released. So most of us are aware of the power of AI. We've heard about it. We've just listened to Antonio's excellent presentation and seen the power of the chatbot. But we know that AI is everywhere. I was particularly interested in the one of the questions in regards to the ethical issues that are surrounding AI, and there are a lot of those, but we know they're everywhere. They're in our cars, they're in our internet, the medicine uses them. All of them are being altered by the power of AI. Our course was designed to expose you or learners to the foundations of AI, some Python programming, and relational databases to give you a good solid foundation for getting started in your career in AI. Our learning objectives are very simple, but again, the learning objectives of the course are really designed to give you a head start on your learning path towards AI. I think Antonio had mentioned, you know, one of the questions came up with things like the AI Watson. There's products along the lines of like Alexa, skill development, and a lot of those don't require any kind of programming. But I think to go further to advance a career in AI, because AI is as we know, is a very broad bucket. You know, what is AI? It's used in so many different areas. So the course gives you a really good solid foundation to get you prepared, to get you started, and to move you in a direction that you want to go. So the course has approximately 40 to 50 hours of instruction, kind of depends on your learning style. If you're like me, that course might take 150 hours, but other people who have a good solid background in the technology, somewhere between 45 to 50 hours of instruction. There's over 100 videos. We have 35 hands-on labs and exercises. You'll do some programming in Python, some SQL programming, and we introduce you to a little bit of IBM Watson. In addition, you always have a chance to check your knowledge. There's 24 knowledge checks. All the knowledge checks cover every one of the key components of the course, and we call them knowledge checks specifically. We don't call them tests. It's an opportunity for you to test your knowledge, and that's what it should be, right? You should be able to check your knowledge, make sure you understand the information. You can always go back. You say, you know, I just didn't get it. I need to go back. That's okay. That's what learning is all about. Go back, take a look, and redo some of the content that you might not have understood clearly. We cover a number of tools: Python, statistics and statistical analysis with SPSS, Folium, MathLib. It goes on, and so these are just a few of the tools that you'll get and be introduced to in the course. Again, you will achieve a certificate for final course completion. You can take that certificate, you can frame it, show it to your spouse, you can show it to your boss, and maybe you'll get that raise that you've been looking for. So again, the course is available now through Future Skills at NASSCOM, and we'd love to have you give it a try. So that's pretty much it from my side. So I'm open to any questions that anybody might have about the course. Let us know a roadmap or role over the next 2 years in the global market. Might be a better question in some respects for Antonio, but from a career standpoint, it's wide open. And I think one of the areas, especially in AI, is in the area of IoT. And IoT, as we know, is becoming even more important as we go forward. So, you know, I look at the role of AI, and all it's going to do is keep expanding. AI is going to be particularly of interest as we move into areas such as augmented and virtual reality. That's a very important area, and it's an up and coming area. There's a lot of work being done in the use. Apple's working in the AR world, of course, Microsoft and their HoloLens, quite a number of other companies, and integrating the AI components into that. So this is a good one. Is it required to know the tools covered like Python, etc., for learning this course? Great question. There aren't really any prerequisites for this course, which is what makes the course so interesting and accessible. It helps if you have some programming knowledge and programming background. It certainly does help, but you don't need it because the exercises take you through on a fairly simple step-by-step basis. So as you're learning to write a little bit of Python code, you're really just starting from scratch, and it doesn't suppose that you know have ever coded in Python at all. I can tell you that as I went through the course myself, I had never coded in Python before, and it was pretty easy. So yeah, you don't need any prerequisites. So excellent. So there's actually 2 questions back to back that I'm going to go ahead and publish. One of them is the certificate help in employment? And the other one is, what opportunities will there be after completing the course? So we have more courses coming through NASSCOM where you can actually really dig in and go after courses like Python or SQL. So there's an opportunity to take that foundation course and go forward. We're looking at beginning. There's a big data course that will be coming out shortly. That's another foundational course. From there, you can move into cybersecurity. That's another course, along with an IoT course, and all of those are coming along sometime in early 2020. So there's a number of opportunities after you complete the course. Now, is the certificate a help in employment? I'd like to think so. I think it is, and I think that what it does for many people who have taken these types of foundational courses, it shows a commitment to improving your skill set, and that's the start, right? So many organizations now, and as I mentioned earlier, the concept of AI is a very broad concept. So, you know, what is AI? Well, AI is very different in the world of medicine versus the world of aerospace mechanics. So for somebody in a very specific vertical industry, having a certificate in a foundational course shows that you have an interest in this area, and it also gives impetus to your supervisors and others to say, hey, look, hey, I did this course, I got a certificate, I did really well, I really liked it, and I'd really like to go further. And so now the impetus is to allow you, and many companies, you know, will often pay their employees or pay for the education for their employees. So this is a good opportunity to show your interest in the area and to show your commitment. And so all of that, yes, it definitely, we have seen it time and time again become a real a key factor in employment. Can a non-IT background people also join the course? Absolutely, you sure can. Again, as I mentioned before, there's no real prerequisites for the course. It takes you through from very simple and easy skills and exercises, and it takes you through a little bit more difficult. So it's what they call in the education world scaffolding. So it takes you from easy things and it moves you into things that are a little bit more harder. We have quite a number of people who over the years have taken some of these courses and they've had no background whatsoever. Is the content delivered pre-recorded or live? It's pre-recorded content. It is a self-paced course. As we mentioned, there's over 100 videos, it's almost 10 hours of total hours of video. It is self-paced, but again, because this is a foundational class, the desire here is for you to go through the course and make sure you gain a thorough understanding of the content. In order to do that, we leave it open for you to go ahead and go back to review content, to try the exercises again, all of that, so that we know that you've done a good, you've been able to get all the information. So it's what they call an asynchronous class. So again, it's pre-recorded. There's nothing that's live, and you don't really need anything special any special technology to take the course. How can I clarify my doubts during the course? And that's why we have the knowledge checks. It's interesting because you can take the knowledge checks. I think we have them set up to take them, if you don't pass it, you can take them again, and you can take them 2 or 3 times, I believe. This is why we have the course as a self-paced guided course. It gives you the opportunity to make sure you feel competent or comfortable and competent that you did complete the material and that you do understand the material. And when you're done, you'll have a pretty good understanding of the foundations of AI.
So the first question was on the pricing. The course for Future Skills members, it's absolutely free of cost. So if you are or your organization is a Future Skills member, you will have a Future Skills ID. You need to log into the Edcast portal and you can access the course from there. It is absolutely free of cost, but that's for a very limited time. So I would request all of you that you go ahead and enroll in this course and make the best use of it. Secondly, for the people who are part of this webinar and are not the part of the Future Skills, NASSCOM Future Skills ecosystem, you can come directly to the web page that I have displayed on the screen, SkillUp.Online, and check out the foundational course. And of course, since this is the course has been recently launched, so we have already seen that a lot of people are taking up this as a paid course. The price of the course is at about 6,500 rupees. So that's a very, very nominal price for a course that has been developed for the industry, by the industry, validated by NASSCOM Sector Skill Council. Now, the second question was that about the certification. Yes, once you complete the course on the Future Skills portal or on the SkillUp.Online portal, you get a NASSCOM SSE SkillUp participation certificate. However, NASSCOM Sector Skill Council has also formulated a formal exam, which is also at a very nominal cost. The details of that can be taken from the Future Skills or the NASSCOM SSE team. I think it's about less than 1,000 rupees. You take that exam, and after completing that exam successfully, you get a NASSCOM SSE completion certificate, which is of tremendous value as far as the future skills in AI is concerned. So that's on the part of the certification and the pricing. The third question which people asked, is the course available? Yes, the course was launched as recently as the 26th of November, and we already have a lot of traction in the IT/ITS industry for the foundational course. So I have again placed a link on the screen, and you guys, all of you can come to this page. You can go through the course. You can also drop in us a word with your email ID and phone number, and we will arrange a call back for you so that if there are any questions that can be answered one-to-one. So there's a question which says that what is the timeline for completion of the course? As Mark mentioned, this is a self-paced learning course. So we generally see that a dedicated learner completes this course in about 3 months time. However, you can, since you most of you would be working professionals, so we feel that by the end of 4 months you'll be able to complete this course. And the access for the course once enrolled is available for about 6 months time. So that's good enough time for you to complete the course. Next question is that if you are stuck somewhere while you're doing the course, how can we? Okay, so the price of the course is in a manner that we have basically 3 plans on this course. One is a silver plan, gold plan, and a platinum plan. So in all these 3 different plans, we provide what we call as assisted mentoring learning. There are course experts who will be consistently monitoring everybody's individual's performance. And the way, if you are stuck at a certain point, or you're not able to solve a particular quiz, or you have a question that you need the course mentors to answer, you can have a direct window with them. You can come on the discussion boards and ask the question. Yeah, so these are the 3 plans which you can see, right? So there's a silver plan, there's a gold plan, and a platinum plan. The features of all these plans are given. In the first plan, you get a discussion board. In the second plan, you get a lot of assisted mentor learning. And of course, in the last, which is a platinum plan, we added up with a personalized mentoring session along with a SME. So SME would be somebody like Antonio and or Mark, who would be also, I'm not saying that they will be the people, but there'll be people of the same or equivalent caliber who would be interacting with you. Yes, so somebody asked a question that the target is to involve undergraduate students in this learning curve. Yes, so this is a foundations course, and we can involve people as young as 11th grade and 12th grade people to get into this course. Since it is a foundations course, it really develops the skills for the future. The coming future, what we are expecting to happen in India and globally. The recording of the webinar will be available for a limited time on the platform. There are no such prerequisites required for doing this course, and thanks for joining in today.